We're so gratified to see so many people here to honor the career and the life of Senator Jennie Forehand. And with that, let me begin by, there are many people who wish to speak, and we are all important, but I'd like to begin by allowing our Senator to read a statement from Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Good afternoon, you all. This is sad that Jennie's not with us, but it's also a celebration of her 36 years of public service to the residents of Gaithersburg, Rockville, for a while, Garrett Park, and in the state of Maryland. And she was a remarkable public servant. And before we recognize anyone else, I think we just really have to acknowledge that Bill Forehand is here. Senator Chris Van Hollen couldn't be here today, but he asked me to read a statement because he served with Jennie in the House and in the Senate. And so it's a few paragraphs. I'm going to read it somewhat quickly here because we have a lot of people, and yes, of course, they're printed on scrap paper. I want to start by extending my heartfelt condolences to Jennie's family, to her beloved husband Bill, and her wonderful children, Virginia and John, and her much adored grandchildren. I am so sorry for your loss. I want you to know that those of us who served with Jennie for many years in Annapolis feel as if we have lost a family member too. And what a member of our legislative family she was. Jennie was an unstoppable force for good. For 36 years, she served our community and our state in the General Assembly. And after retirement, she served it for very many more, neighbor to neighbor and friend to friend. As Jennie once said herself, I just feel like I've got a bond with constituents and people who trust my ideas or trust where I would turn if I had the same problem they did. That's just the sort of person that Jennie was. And she left a legacy of service to others that will be felt for many years to come. Jennie's work in the legislature was an inspiration to all who knew her, including me. I had the honor of serving beside her, first in the House of Delegates, and then as we entered the state Senate on the very same day. It seemed that Jennie was at the forefront of every issue, from equal pay to family leave, to confronting domestic violence, to ensuring that our children have clean air to breathe, to transportation, public safety, and on and on. Her list of achievements is wide and deep. I will always remember how Jennie would work to secure support for an idea or a proposed bill. She deployed an unbeatable mix of steely determination wrapped in Southern charm. She never lost her aw shucks Nashville twang, but woe be it to anyone who mistook her genial demeanor for a lack of grit. Behind her easygoing manner, Jennie had an intensity of purpose and persistence that fueled her many accomplishments. You could never count her out, and anyone who underestimated Jennie's legislative acumen did so at her own peril. We will all miss our dear legislative family member, Jennie Forehand, but all of us who had the privilege of working with her and being her friend know that her legacy of good work is all around us. She truly left our community and our state a much better place. May she rest in peace, and may we rededicate ourselves to her mission of helping others in our community. Jennie, we love you. That's from U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen. So, Kumar and I are organizing it. We don't know exactly how this year goes.
Well, I'd like to say a few words at the end to clean up anything that other people haven't, but go ahead. we're all of us who require confirmation by the Senate are very deferential to the Senate.
I'll speak briefly and join Kumar and wrap up. So, I always say I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. But especially today, I have to say that I'm very proud to be Chris said it so beautifully. Her fortitude, her passion for making a difference, and her commitment to community was really extraordinary. And she did it for decades and decades. There are a lot of people in this audience who have served in public office. Those who haven't have no idea how hard a job it is, especially Congresswoman Morella in Montgomery County, where people are so engaged. You know, we have former county executive Ike Leggett, people who know, former state treasurer Nancy Cobb, people who know that all the time, every day, we've got constituents who want our help, need our support, and expect our ear. They want to hear what it is that we can do to help them. And Jennie was amazing at that. There are a number of people here who served on her staff. Kathy Dunn, but so many others. Why don't you raise your hand if you ever were on Jennie's staff? Legislative, okay. None of us can do what we do without our staff. Jennie also had quirks, and she had stuff that she was known for. And so I want to just mention, first off, that I dug out some emery boards that are and she was ferocious. One of her greatest pride, moments of pride, was when she was able to ban smoking in the legislature. She was before her time on that. She was before her time on genetic discrimination, when no one was talking about that. Jennie led the way on that, and so many others. She was ferocious in terms of civil rights, women's rights, and speaking up for people who didn't have a voice. And I'll do more later, but I just had to say that Jennie was a cheapskate. And those of you who know her know that she'd always wait for someone else to pick up the bill, or she would take the crackers at the diner home because that was going to be, maybe part of her next meal and stuff. So, Bill, Virginia, John, I'm hoping you have multiple millions of dollars. She cut every coupon and trimmed every corner in just the most ferocious way. So I have to say that to honor Jennie, I brought Tupperware because there's going to be leftover food. And she couldn't be in an event honoring Jennie Forehand without Tupperware. So with that, we're going to hear from a lot of people.
And she served as a U.S. ambassador to the Organization for OECD for Economic Development and Cooperation in Europe.
There you go.
I really wanted to come to celebrate, because that's what we're here for. Each one of us has stories and memories of Jennie Forehand, and it inspires and strengthens us when we think about them. And this is the time when around here everybody's thinking about, now let's see, what did I do with Jennie? I'm so honored to see Bill. It's so great because you were always kind of, not so much the driving force, but the supportive pole that was there that helped out. So thank you, and your daughter and your son who came eager to celebrate with all of us. My memory, Jennie and I were both elected the same year to the state legislature, to the House of Delegates. And unlike Congress, we sit according to our district. So I sat next to Jennie for my 8 years in the state legislature. She served longer, of course. She served, I think, 16 years, and then she went over to the Senate, and she served altogether 36 years. Boy, that's quite an accomplishment. But I just can remember the issues that we discussed together, and it was not partisan. God, Congress should learn about that. It was really what helped our county and what helped our state. And that is what drew us together. And that's what I think Congress needs more of. That face-to-face respect for each other. To listen, to learn, and to lead. So I am just so pleased to be here. When I think of Jennie, I think of Shakespeare, those about her from her, to learn the perfect ways of honor. And I think that's exactly what she displayed. I want to thank all of those who put this together, and delighted delighted to see so many elected people and former elected people who are here. So I celebrate with all of you, and thank you all for coming in honor of Jennie Forehand. A great day.
Let me next introduce a person who Jennie served with very directly. He was the chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, and he then later was elected by all of us to be our Attorney General, and that is former Attorney General Brian Frost.
Well, you know, I was looking around the room, and I realized, first of all, Jennie was with me every single moment of my 28 years in the General Assembly. I don't think that there's anybody who served with her longer than that. And she was one of my favorites right from the beginning. When I was a freshman in the House of Delegates, it was, I think, when she began her escapade of hiding the ashtrays. But it was very welcome because you go into the committee and you go on the floor, and even though there was a rule that said you couldn't smoke, people smoked on the floor of the House of Delegates. It infuriated Jennie. It made me intensely uncomfortable because I hated to smoke. But some of our good friends, Patty Sherb and Cass Taylor, smoked on the floor of the House of Delegates, despite the rule that Jennie had to adjust. And she was a tireless advocate to banish smoking from the workplace. And it's such a relief. You can't imagine, your kids can't imagine what it was like to work in an office that was filled with smoke, and you had to sit there because your colleagues were entitled to smoke. It was one of the best things, I think, that Maryland has ever done. Jennie and I served on the Judicial Proceedings Committee together for 12 years. And during that time, Jennie was a key advocate and a key vote on some of the most important pieces of legislation that we dealt with. I think these were all 65 votes on the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Marriage equality, repeal of the death penalty, the Firearm Safety Act of 2013, which the Supreme Court is now wreaking havoc with, but has saved thousands and thousands of lives. Jennie was a pivotal person on each one of those bills. And she was a delight to work with. She was always smiling. She was passionate about the stuff that she worked on. And she was a good friend. And like Connie Morella, I'll end with a Shakespeare quote too. I may have heard it from Connie, but it seems to me to be very appropriate. See how the little candle casts its beams. So shines a good deed in a naughty world.
Next, we're going to hear from Montgomery County's longest-serving county executive, Ike Leggett, and then the mayor and council of Rockville are actually on an all-day retreat, so they are here with us briefly. So after County Executive Leggett, we'll hear from both our mayors. So Ike Leggett, extraordinary leader and a good friend.
Thank you. I'm here to first of all say thanks. Thank all of you for the work that you did over so many years in Annapolis and around the great state. Thanks because early in my career, when I was just getting started, I was new to politics here, trying to get started, didn't know many of you. Jennie reached out to me, and I wondered for years why she immediately related to me. It was that all shucks. We were both from the South, both suburbs. I recognized a lady, a respectful woman, someone who cared about the community, about her family, and certainly about all of Rockville and all of Montgomery County. That all shucks was not all shucks all the time. She could be tough. I remember the conversations we had in getting the courthouse built next week. She was tireless. And when she called, it was not all shucks all the time. It was like, we got to get this done. Brian just mentioned something that is important. I introduced the first bill, the ban smoking. And we jumped through an awful lot of hoops to get that done. This was in the late 90s. We were on the forefront of so many other jurisdictions around the entire country. There are an awful lot of people who looked the other way. Jennie, she had my back. She understood the significance of the issue. She was relentless in helping us to get that started. We can all take credit for that. Oftentimes I see people and talk to people about what we did back then. And tell myself, where did we get this we from? There were very few people out in front of us. Jennie was part of it. She was the part of the people who helped make it possible. So I wanted to be here to thank you, thank all of you for embracing her, or embracing me, because it's through her and so many others in this room that I got an opportunity to serve the citizens of Montgomery County. So, hats off to Jennie for all that she's done. A great statesperson, a gentleman person, a good soul.
Well, we are very lucky to have the mayor of the city of Rockville here, a person who just won an election and has a retreat very shortly. So we want to introduce you, but I'd be remiss if I would not mention the fact that Jennie Forehand would be so proud that we broke a barrier by electing an African-American woman to be mayor of her hometown. Mayor Ashton.
Thank you. I really appreciate the comments and thank you for organizing this. Because it's important to recognize people who made tremendous sacrifice and to honor a tremendous colleague. I happened to meet Senator Forehand not only as a representation in Rockville, but she helped to swear in my husband when he was appointed by the governor for the Maryland Center. And what I can say, it's not just what she did, it's how she did it. And helping people to come along and to help them to be successful. She was ahead of her time, as people said, on many issues. I had a chance to talk to her very deeply about the clean and the smoking efforts that she undertook in Maryland to make Maryland a smoke-free state. We forget and neglect how much we had to deal with in the past to just be able to be in a restaurant, to be in our offices. I know I hear, legend says that she actually moved all the ashtrays from the floor. and people tried to smoke anyway, but she was, when she wanted to do something, when she knew it was right, she went after it with all of her heart. And even if people weren't ready, she found a way to make them ready. And she did it with a very smart and firm hand. But she was very kind. She also was ahead of her time in advocating for the biotech corridor that we have and some of the supporting venture and innovation here in Montgomery County and in Rockville. She was wicked smart. She was incredibly kind. And I have to say, now being in school, she was an inspiration to me personally. And I hope to be able to not only accomplish as much, but to do it in the way that she did it, with kindness, but firmness as well.
I want to acknowledge the rest of the Rockville Mayor and Council because they are going to have to speak out in a minute to go back to their retreat. So a bunch of new leaders, one returning leader, but I see Marissa Valeri, I see Zola Sola, I see Barry Jackson, Adam Van so anyone else on the Rockville City Council. So thank you for your leadership and thank you for making the time to stop by. Our friend, the Gaithersburg Mayor, Judd Ashman, is going to be next. As you know, Gaithersburg is about half our district and has been an incredible partner on so many issues. Mayor Ashman has been around a long time to tell those stories.
But what I will say, and I think is really relevant and bears saying, is that City of Gaithersburg is, I feel like it's well known, and certainly there's a tradition that we're very proud of in the City of Gaithersburg for being collegiate, for having a strong team that can work together and get things done. Even when there's disagreements, we can do it without being disagreeable. I was initially elected to office in 2007, so this is sort of toward the end of Jenny's career. But Jenny was a fixture at all of our city events, and she was somebody that I and others always looked to as an example. And when I became mayor in 2014 and was thinking about this tradition that we have of collegiality and civility and getting things done in Gaithersburg, Jenny is one of those people that was the exemplar. I feel that we are continuing to embody the spirit of Jennie Forehand as we carry forward that tradition. So in addition to all of the large resume and the important things that she's done as a legislator, I would say you should know that she's had an impact on us in the way that we carry forward our government every single day. So thank you all very much. I salute her.
And before I recognize the next person to speak, I do want to tell a funny Gaithersburg-oriented story that the mayor may not be aware of, but when we wanted to get money into the city of Gaithersburg, there was this rumor that one of your predecessors might run against her for the state senate. So Jennie Forehand was all on board with fomenting this rumor that if we didn't get money to Gaithersburg, this other individual would run against her, and it worked. Let me next introduce a colleague of mine for many years, and of Jenny's, and a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. Jim Gilchrist served for for I guess 12 years or 16 years, and his tenure and Jenny's overlapped, and of course his father as well knew her. And so with that, Delegate Jim Gilchrist.
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you, Cheryl, and everybody for being here. Thank you for organizing. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I just would like to say a couple things about working with Jenny and knowing Jenny for a long time. First of all, when you're here with Jenny in the community, and you walk around with her and you go to doors with her, and people would open the door and they would say, "Hi, Jenny." And they would say, "Hi, Jenny," like they had just talked to her last week. And probably they had. And I saw this again and again, and it was just remarkable how she connected with people. And she always found a way to connect what the state was doing with the lives of the constituents and the people of Maryland in remarkable ways over and over again. I'd also like to, just a little anecdote from Annapolis. Late in her office one night, she was studying a bill about energy and financing, distribution of energy around the state. And she was studying it not because she liked it, but because she wanted to kill it. And on the floor the next day in the state senate, that's exactly what she did. She stood up and she said, the financing of this is going to really harm the middle class families, individuals across Maryland. Probably her biggest supporter on the floor that day was Senator Frosch, and just said it. And it was a very important issue. And so it came back in consecutive years, and the bill is better for it. The policy is better for it. And it's just, Mike Gordon used to say, Mike Gordon, the state delegate, he used to say, "Don't be fooled by our smile." And I think we've heard the same thing from Senator Holland. I think we heard the same thing from others. I think you said that. Don't be fooled by her smile. She can, Mike Gordon used to say, she'll quote statute by chapter and verse. And you better be ready. So I'd just like to conclude with mentioning how important her family was to her. Bill, John, Virginia, the whole family. It's good to see you. I can't tell you how many times I'd be on my way to Jennie's house with urgency, and I was all, I was worked up about something, and then I would talk to Bill about history for half an hour. and at the end of that time, I'd be like, I forgot what my thoughts were. and you were such a great team, and John and Virginia, I've known you longer than I can remember, and thank you for sharing your mom, your wife, your grandmother with Maryland. She modernized Maryland in so many ways. She, just more than we can mention here today. And I just want to say thank you to the family, and thank you all for being here today.
So I know basically everyone in the room, and you guys are all extraordinary, and each of you has taken time to come today to honor Jennie, and so Kumar and I just really want to say thank you for that. So the next person who's going to speak is our friend, former colleague, Jennie's former colleague, the CAO of Montgomery County, and in my totally biased view, one of the most brilliant leaders in the state of Maryland. Please welcome Rich Mamino.
I wish you had said that quote like 6 years ago. It's a pleasure to have you all here. One of the reasons why I suggested this room for the service is this courtroom has been renovated and preserved because this courtroom is where Thurgood Marshall argued one of the landmark civil rights cases concerning a teacher in Montgomery County in our horrific past. Black and white teachers both had to have the same certifications, but black teachers were paid less than white teachers. He argued here, unfortunately unsuccessfully, to get that overturned. Believe it or not, the school system did settle out of court because they knew they were going to probably lose, but this room is preserved in the memory of that effort to move forward with civil rights. To me, Jennie Forehand was part of that struggle for equality her entire life. I remember as a state senator hearing a story about Jennie's relationship with another state senator from Prince George's County, Yulee Curry. And if you know anything, both of them are North Carolina natives. And in college, Jennie went to what would have been the Women's Public University of North Carolina, which has now been just merged into the University of Campbell. I don't know what the name of the school was, but Jennie went to that school, which, not surprising at the time, was all white. Yulee went to a nearby historically black university. And the students from the historically black school were employed by the Women's College. And they told me the story of when you worked at the Women's College as an African-American male, you were not allowed to make eye contact with any of the white girls. That's how horrible, relentless the segregation was. Both of those individuals went forward to serve in the Maryland Senate to undo all of those rules. And when I think about Jennie, it's her entire life, her entire career, she made it about looking at people's eyes and actually learning who they were. I know Jennie, and we talked about some of the things that she accomplished. Brian talked a little bit about this, but what you may not know, in 2001, when passing an anti-discrimination statute that added sexual orientation to Maryland's law, something that probably many of us would think, oh, well, that was simple. That was easy. That was an enormous fight. Maryland in 2001 was just the 7th state to move forward with that. Jennie Forehand stood up and was the floor leader on that bill. And so many people were willing to run from that issue. She ran towards it because her entire life was about standing up for equality in our state. She made a difference in my life. Because I was just the legislative co-chair trying to push that in free state justice. But she stood up and made sure, with Cheryl, to back me to become the first openly gay person elected to the General Assembly, elected to the state Senate. We fought for that issue and for a range of other issues that has made Maryland a welcoming place for all. And that is her legacy. Her legacy lives in places like this, because she embraced that agenda and she made sure no one would not be seen in our community or heard in that community. So Bill, your whole family, thank you for letting her share her time. I'm sure it wasn't easy for all of you, but those sacrifices for her have made the lives of every family in this state better. And she will be sorely missed. Thank you.
I'd next like to call up a long-standing legislative age, but I will tell one funny Rich Medellino story.
Just one?
Just one. It wasn't funny, actually, but it was typical for her when somebody said, can an openly gay person get elected? And her response was, yeah, because he's also openly smart and openly hardworking. And that was funny. So with that, a person who had worked with Jennie Forehand for many, many years and was really had a great symbiotic relationship with her, and that would be the wonderful Kathy Dunn.
I am the aide, and usually people don't see me. I'm just writing the stuff they say to the public. I've worked for Jennie for the last 7 years. She was in the Senate. It was a good run. The one thing I would say about her is Jennie cared, and she didn't care. She cared about people. I'd walk with her into the historic inns, and the chambermaid would be going, "Hey, Jennie, how's it going?" And she knew everyone, and she cared about people, and she went to bat. We'd get a call from Rockville, "Hey, our funding's in danger." Walk down the hall to whoever was doing the budget and straighten that right out. She didn't care about NIMBYs, her favorite enemy. There was a certain courthouse that was trying to be built that had been built with a number of agreements between the city of Rockville, and a number of delegates went to a community meeting and caved and said, "No, we're not going to do it." And I think Governor O'Malley was going to back up. Jennie never wavered in her position when the courthouse was built. She never wavered on the ICC. I mean, you can get a lot of hate coming at you when you're an elected official. The families of elected people make a sacrifice. They don't get all the time they would like with their parent or spouse. And I just want to thank Jennie's family for giving us her time. I know it affected all of you. And she did care about you, and she's very proud about you all. And she cared about the other members. She would come in from a meeting and she would, "Okay." And she'd talk about a particular delegate or senator. "Oh, she's so exciting. She spoke right up to the governor." And she really enjoyed it. And one last note to all the elected officials: be nice to your aides. I'm the only one who knows where she hid the ashtray.
reserving the room. Rich took care of pulling out a million great pictures and stuff, Kathy, and so.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So I don't know whether she plans on speaking, but we really can't have her here without hearing from longtime delegate, brilliant budget leader, and Maryland's fabulous state treasurer, Nancy Cobb, Jenny's friend. I know. You've given a speech or two in your life. So.
I had not, and I do remember what Barbara Mikulski always said, which is that everything that has to be said has been said, but not everyone has said it. Yes, I remember the first day that Connie and Jenny came to appropriations, and yes, the story about the ashtrays, it was not on the floor, it was in the appropriations committee, and yes, she did take them, and yes, she did hide them, and the chairman was not very happy, but there were a lot of people silently applauding her doing it, and that was Jenny. I mean, from the first day, this was literally the first day, she did what she thought was right. She worked with people, she understood, she sometimes tried to compromise, in fact, and in the end, well, she got a bill killed the first year, it came back better the second. That was not a unique instance of Jenny's impact. Brian's right, he probably served longer with Jenny than anyone, but I will say I served with Jenny for my entire service in the House, except for that first term. And then I served as her treasurer. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned, and maybe you all have noticed it, is Jenny did have a southern accent, but I will tell you that accent became more and more pronounced and more southern the longer she was on the telephone with certain people. She just became herself, and yes, she did have Tupperware, and we went many times, Jenny and I, when she was to buffets. I mean, but she never took more than she needed. And I'll end only by saying that there are a few people whom everybody, from different perspectives, thinks about with a smile on their face. And that was Jenny. A really ultimately nice, good person who we felt like being with. And so I thank you all, and I'm not surprised that the staff did the background work. You always have done a great job. And I don't remember, Rich, when you became staff of the Appropriations Committee, but I do have to say, I'm sure you will agree, that the Appropriations Committee spawned some of the best politicians, most honest and smart in Annapolis, and Connie and her colleagues were among them. Thank you.
Now we're going to go to the lobbyist corps. Actually, you know, there are white hat lobbyists who we really respect a lot. And one of the ones who I think of most prominently is a gentleman by the name of Eric Galley, who has represented so many important environmental and health points of view. And so, Eric, if you would please come on.
You know, when the chairman called me to speak, he, as always, said, you have 2 minutes. And I thought to myself, well, he's not going to have his gavel. He's not going to have his damn buzzer. So maybe I'll just speak as long as I want. And when I came to the Maryland General Assembly in January of 1993, I was the first lobbyist we hired specifically to try to reduce smoking consumption, and some of you remember that time. And for those of you who haven't been around for the 31 years know the General Assembly, especially the Maryland Senate, was not nearly as progressive as it is today. You counted your friends on a hand or two, and there's a whole bunch of anecdotes I can tell. One of them was especially the JPR committee, especially before Chairman Frost chaired it, was a very conservative place. And every once in a while, she'd have a bill in there, and we'd talk beforehand, and I'd smile and say, smile, and go in there and try to make some new friends today. And she'd smile back, and she would. And I have some anecdotes talking about that, and trying to stay away from the things that people have already said. Now, in the late 1990s, when then Councilman Ike Leggett passed Maryland's first countywide smoking ban bill, we were concerned that because the city of Rockville, the city of Gaithersburg, and a couple other of the jurisdictions had to pass it also. You could do it as a health code measure, or you could do it as an ordinance. And if it was done as an ordinance, they had independence to do this. And I remember running to Jennie and saying, "Oh, we got to get the city of Rockville and the city of Gaithersburg to pass this also now that the county has done it." And she smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've already taken care of it." And I kind of smiled and said, "Well, how have you taken care of it?" And she said, "Don't you worry about it, you don't need to know." And years later, there was a conversation about bond bills and what people were told about their bond bills. And the other big story, and I've told the story before, it was March of 1999, which I know because my wife was pregnant with our first child, and you just remember those days. And again, the Senate was more conservative, and you needed 32 votes at the time to break a filibuster. Now it's 29 votes, and that was a very big difference. We had a cigarette tax bill on the floor, and I was very nervous about it because although there weren't many filibusters, back then there was the threat that you might have a filibuster. I was very nervous about it. I was very young, and I go to the Senate chamber, and we're working. Senator Frost was there, and we were working with him on language and alternatives, and Senator Van Hollen was working with us on things that we wanted to get into the bill that we wanted to prevent. I was very nervous about it, and she walked up, and she had what you could only describe as a care package or an overnight package. And I swear, I think there was like pajamas in there, but there was definitely a sleeping bag, and she had food, and she had drink, and I was very nervous. She's like, "This is going to be a great day." I said, "No. I was very nervous about it, that we had a post." She said, "Relax, have a brownie." And I said, "Well, why are you in such good spirits today?" And she said, "If these guys want to spend the next 3 or 4 days and this weekend talking about the dangers of tobacco and why we need to get rid of it, I'm all in. We're going to win this thing, and it's going to be great. Just you relax." Well, it was a mini filibuster that went on, and it was off. We never really had a full thing, but over the course of a few days, there was a lot of negotiation, a lot of talking. And I didn't take that brownie. I was too nervous at the time. And she came out and she said, "Now do you want a brownie?" So that's my main thing. I'm probably at 2 minutes already. I just wanted to say also that people mentioned the genetic testing, and I did want to say that she was so early in that whole thing and asking about what information can they get from you in this genetic testing. How can your insurance company get this information? How can they use it? Can your employer get this information? How can they use it against you? And she wrote and passed groundbreaking legislation in the genetic testing market. And I think some of us in this room probably have cheaper health insurance and better health insurance than we would have had because she passed that legislation and was so fierce about it and so first about it. So I could go on forever, but I just wanted to thank you all for being here. And, she was a great lady.
So just to be clear, when Eric Galley talks about genetic testing, it's not just testing, it's discrimination based on your genes that they could, as he said, charge you more for health insurance and all that. So it was a big deal. Now that we've been here a couple of minutes, we've got to bring up our council mayor, Sidney Katz. My dear friend, he has been the mayor, he's been a council member in Gaithersburg, he's been the mayor of Gaithersburg, and then he's District 3 council member, which includes both Gaithersburg and Rockville. He worked for many, many, many years with Jennie Forehand. Sidney, thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl and Kumar, and all for doing this.
because I have not been here to hear all the stories, so I'm not going to repeat what I didn't hear. But I do, you know, what I was thinking, and Cheryl, I only spoke to Cheryl 3 times yesterday about this event, but when I started to think about what I'd like to say about Jennie, I knew that there were certain stories not mentioned. And the one story that I would like to tell, and I see Bill is here, there he is. And Bill, thank you for everything you've done for Montgomery County as well. But one day I was standing there talking to Jennie. Of course, she had that accent, and whoever said that she could put it on a little thicker as you were talking to her. But one day I was standing there talking to her, and she was talking about Warren Beatty. And I said, how did this come up in conversation? She says, well, you know, I'm friendly with Warren and Shirley's mother. And she was. She would say, every now and then, I saw Mama. And I said, do you know them that well? She said, yeah, we see Warren every now and then. She was friendly with Warren Beatty. Then one day I'm standing there, she knew everybody. Then one day I'm standing there talking to her. We got to talking about Joan Baez, which is not a normal conversation I would have had with Jennie, but we were talking about the Shady Grove Music Theater. And we belong to, my family belonged to the Washingtonian, which is where Rio is. And Sam Odd owned the land where Shady Grove Music Fair was, and he owned the Washingtonian. And a lot of the stars would come, who were working at Shady Grove Music Fair, would come and stay at the Washingtonian. And Joan Baez was there, and she was with a guy who was playing the guitar. He could not sing well, but he was playing the guitar in the corner. And of course it was Bob Dylan. She was dating Bob Dylan at the time. But anyhow, talking to Jennie about Shady Grove Music Fair or whatever it was, and she says, well, you know, I'm friendly with Dr. Baez. She was friendly with Joan Baez's father. She knew everybody. So I didn't have any other conversations with her. I was afraid that she would know my background as well. But I can tell you of all the people I've met, and we've met, thank goodness, we've met many, many people along the way. Jennie Forehand was certainly one of those special people who, and I know the little bit that I did hear when I walked in of the stories about the ashtrays, I certainly was familiar with those. But she had a way that she could kill you soft. She had a way that she knew how to get it done and get it done well. And I always tell people that's like killing the kosher. You didn't even know you were dead. And anyway, we are all so very, very lucky to have had Jennie Forehand and Bill Forehand and the entire family, and our family in Montgomery County. Thanks for listening.
Wow, Jennie knew Warren Beatty and didn't look you up. We have a number of important faith leaders here, and I would like to introduce Reverend Vince Liber, who was Jennie's pastor. Oh, there it is. And, you know, he knew her in so many ways that some of us didn't know her, obviously. And so, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. My claim to fame is that I was Jennie's pastor for 7 years. 3 quick things about her. She was the most principled politician I know. And her policies were infused by the Methodist social principles. I admired her dearly, and we spent many, many, many hours together discussing what was going on in Annapolis. The second thing about her is that she was extremely empathetic. All I had to do was to get on the phone, call Jennie and say, I know a college student in Rockville who's struggling with her tuition bills. And she would say, have her call me. And she was willing to write letters of recommendation and to fill out those old FAFSA forms. Remember those old FAFSA forms? The third thing I think about when I think of Jennie and Bill is they were eternally fascinated with the history of this country. I got my first tutorial about the Lewis and Clark expedition from Jennie. And I'm still fascinated by that. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I found myself going through an old atlas that I had at home, and Jennie and Bill were very much in my thoughts. Thank you for all that you have done, and I'm grateful that our paths crossed. Somebody said, the tragedy of life is not death, because it is destined for us all. The tragedy of life is to die with your convictions undeclared and your service unfulfilled. Jennie died with all her convictions declared and her service fulfilled. What a joy to be here celebrating that life. Thank you.
We are not going to go all day, and we are not going to have everyone in this room speak, but there are still a few more people that, before we get to the family. Casey Caseman, Reverend Casey Caseman, while we were on Faith Leaders. Casey has been an extraordinary leader in the nonprofit sector, in the interfaith sector in Montgomery County, and was an important leader of community ministries of Rockville, now called Community Reach. And my friend Andrea Kempter-Wink is kind enough to be behind the camera here with our live stream. This program is hopefully on YouTube, and it's on my Senator Facebook page, and we'll share it broadly so that anyone who couldn't make it here will be able to see it. But Casey Caseman was such a leader with Community Ministry of Rockville, now Community Reach, that the Caseman Clinic was named in his honor, and he worked very closely with Jennie on that and many other issues. Casey,
I am deeply honored to be with this host of kindred spirits celebrating the life and faith and impact of Jennie Forehand. Senator Rockville Warnock, commenting on the life of First Lady Rosalind Carter, observed, she doesn't need a eulogy. Her life has been a sermon. The very same could be said of Jennie Forehand. And the text I suggest for that sermon would be referencing the two greatest commandments: to love the Lord our God with all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our mind, and to love our neighbor as ourself. That's what she did. All of us have commented on her natural kindness, her empathy, the way she would relate to anybody and everybody that she met. But like Rosalind Carter, she also understood that she could have a far greater impact by changing the systems, the laws, the policies of a city, a county, and a nation. I'll just use a couple quick examples of that. I arrived in 1979, and it was within that same year that Jennie came up with the idea that Rockville ought to have a senior center. And she went ahead and made it possible for the school on Carnation Drive, this gigantic building, to be a senior center. So I was ushered in to meet with Mayor Van Hanna and with Lori Blick, the city manager. What do we do? We do have a senior commission here, and there are 3 or 4 people, but they haven't met for quite a while. Well, to make a longer story short, they needed to come up with a commission. I could help them with that, with the connections I had with all the synagogues and churches throughout that time who had senior programs. And then we had the senior center, but then it had to be, of course, staff. And at the time, they thought, how could we ever use all of this building? Well, today, you know, it's a multi-million-dollar program. And the other thing that I had to do at that point, by the way, to convince Rockville that this is important, we developed teams of people going out spring and fall for over 2 years, door to door in every neighborhood of Rockville, identifying who were over 55 and notifying them of the services available now through Rockville and Montgomery County. That was all because of Jennie. Yes, I have the honor, following my retirement, of the clinic being named for me.
but it'd be far more appropriate to be known as the Jennie Forehand element, because it wouldn't have existed without her. I have been turned down by my friends who told me how much they loved me, at City Hall and the county government, and how dangerous we were approaching. But, geez, this is a recessionary period. It's just unrealistic. You thought you might know better. Well, Jennie knew what I was doing, and she knew I had a Blue Ribbon Committee, so she said, come on over to Annapolis. I gave you the time, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, for testifying. We ended up with $150,000 required matching. So here comes the county, and then the city, and then we began on a low-scale basis, and today it's serving, of course, thousands of people, thanks to her. On a more personal level, it means so much, Bill, for you, and John and Virginia to be here. We'll never forget that when our daughter was received inducted, into the bar of Maryland, she went all the way to Annapolis and gave our family our first tour of the state capitol, that she was so proud. My wife reminded me before leaving the house, she said, when she was directing an International Health Policy Institute, they put together a national conference on health policy. And Jennie came and impressed them with great expertise, and that's on the policy that at that time was a model for the nation coming out of the state of Maryland. The very best way I know of honoring her is in just with our speeches. It means I know so much to all of us to be in a position of just coming together, especially in the light of the world that we're living in today that is so fractured. Jennie would want us to be moving out of our particular comfort zones, reaching across all lines of difference, acknowledging that we're essentially sisters and brothers of one human family, and that we ought to be working more collaboratively together in meeting our common needs and interests. And so I trust all of us in leaving now will be leaving feeling recommitted to living and loving our neighbors with far greater abandonment. Thank you.
We have a bunch of stuff still. Let's see. First off, Virginia just informed us that apparently, and I did not know this, this is what an extraordinary honor. Apparently, statewide, the flags are at half-mast in Jennie's memory. I want to acknowledge that there are a number of elected, current and former elected officials who are not going to be speaking today, but we really thank them for taking the time. We have to start with our 2 District 17 colleagues are now, since Omar abandoned us. But Ryan Spiegel, our newest delegate, was here, but he had to go. But Delegate Julie Kolakovich-Carr and former Delegate Kirill Resnick, former County Council member Bruce Adams, Gaithersburg Council member Mike Sesma, President Evan Glass. I think, did I get everyone? Richard, told me something? I think I got former Rockville Mayor Stephen Graff. I think that's it. Next up, we'd like to bring up Eileen McGuckian and Nancy Picard. So I will start and then whoever will chime in here. Peerless Rockville is Jennie's preference and selection for a cause that she would like you to consider supporting, and she would like them to make a charitable donation in her honor, in her memory. And Peerless Rockville does such important work, and she was a founding member, and she was ferociously devoted to preserving preserving Rockville's history. Kumar, do you want to add something more about Fearless?
No, that's about it. That nails it down.
Okay, well, Eileen McGuckian can speak to the past, Nancy Picard can talk to the present and future, and these are two terrific, dedicated leaders. So glad you're both here. Thank you.
Well, I've heard about all these Johnny-come-latelys who knew Jenny in the 70s, 80s, and the legislature. I've met Jenny when our families both moved to Rockville around in the same decade anyway, in the 1960s. And this was right after urban renewal, and we were all kind of reeling and realizing what was left of Rockville and what should we do. Jenny started, I think, the Civic Advisory Improvement Committee for Rockville, which means you can get into any topic that you want and have a say in doing it. And as that, she was on a lot of, got a lot of different things done with the commercial community, with the residents, and now we know she was building up her campaign, but she was doing all that. She and Bill were one family, and two people who were Peerless Rockville charter members in 1974. So that's almost 50 years ago. We sat around the living room on West Montgomery Avenue and said, we have to do something to preserve what is still here. And we began Peerless Rockville. And both of them remain staunch supporters ever since, welcoming people at progressive dinners, going to the legislature with bond bills for Montrose School and the courthouse next door. So all sorts of things that kept on going. So very important parts of Peerless Rockville. And John was a board member for a while. And so Nancy Picard, I retired in 2008, and Nancy came on a few years later, and I think she's great.
Well, I will be brief. I just want to say a few things on behalf of Peerless Rockville. Number one, well, personally, I have heard Jenny's stories since I came on and joined Peerless in 2014. I did have the honor of the 1 year that Jenny served on the board. It was my first year as executive director. So that's where I met Jenny and Bill. On behalf of the organization, Virginia, John, Bill, we are so honored that you have selected Peerless as a legacy chosen up, but just as an organization to give funds in Jenny's name. And we've heard a lot about all of her efforts in the state and everything she's done, and a little bit about Rockville, but this choice just really reflects how Rockville was her home and how much she cared. And I know, coming from the family and making this decision reflects that. She left Rockville to join her family and be with her children after retiring from the Senate. But I know in her heart, she stayed here in Rockville in many ways. So this is a really important thing. And for those of you who don't know who we are, as Eileen mentioned, the organization was founded in 1974 by concerned citizens, really advocating for their home to make it be a wonderful place. And that's still one of our missions, historic preservation, history, sharing that history. And we continue to do that. The coming year will be Peerless Rockville's 50th anniversary. And I think Jenny would be really happy to know that any funds donated will also help fund our future as we continue to look ahead. So unless Eileen, you're going to add there, we're really honored, and I learned so much today, so thank you for all your work.
Before we go on, I just want to say that both Kumar and I are going to be making significant contributions to Peerless Rockville in Jenny's memory, and I hope that a lot of you will do the same, so that Rockville's history can continue to be preserved and celebrated. And I didn't tell Kumar I was going to say that. So he was nodding.
I don't know it's not a problem. So in any case, so many people have spoken of their love for Jenny, and and of course, thanking her family. And so what is more appropriate than to ask the Forehand family now to come up and make a few comments on behalf of one of the great treasures of the city of Rockville and Montgomery County and the state.
And after we hear from the family, we'll do a quick wrap up, and then you guys have to eat and drink, because
Right.
we got a lot of food, so I hope you're hungry. Okay. Bill, John, Virginia.
Well, I appreciate this. I'm looking at the most important people in the world right now. It's amazing to see you all. Appreciate you having this party for Jenny, and I wish you were here to see it. I've got a little message here I'd like to just read. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today and to celebrate Jenny. She would be thrilled to see all of you, and always did love a crowd. She loves a crowd, and she would love this crowd. I specifically like to thank Kumar and Cheryl for organizing the event and getting us all here today. I won't speak long, however, but I'd like to make a few observations. I feel incredibly appropriate that we are in the center of Rockville today. Jenny and I moved into the new development in Woodley Gardens in 1960, and when I was offered a position with the federal government. And for the next 55 years, Rockville was our home, and it offered the perfect environment for Jenny to thrive. She loved being in the spotlight, and that started back in the 7th grade when I met her. She started small. One of the first projects I remember that we did, we gathered a group of volunteers to paint the Welcome to Rockville sign down on the road coming into Rockville. You remember that first sign? Any of you remember that first sign? You're all too young. We still have a photo of Jenny along with our daughter, Virginia, putting on the new coat of paint to highlight those Rockville letters. From that point forward, there was really no stopping Jenny. I can't say exactly what drove her to become more and more involved and give more and more of her time to a huge variety of causes. I can say that I never saw her happier than when she was able to help someone, and perhaps by getting more involved in the government process, allowed her to help more people. I would not say that she was selfless. For the most part, I know she enjoyed being in the limelight. Probably the result of being an only child. But I will say that she loved this community and gave everything she had to it. For me, Jenny was the love of my life, and our marriage lasted for 65 years. The last few years have not been easy to watch, as Alzheimer's took a toll. However, bringing back in Rockville today reminds me, being back in Rockville reminds me of the impact that Jenny had on the community, and it certainly is no exaggeration to say that hers was a life well lived. So I thank you for this gathering, and I would have missed it for the world.
Tamara, thank you for your partnership. Rich Madalino, Kathy Dunn, Andrea Kempner-Wing, and everybody who is here. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you, Dawson's Catering. So we buy local, we support the local market. Please go to Dawson's Market and Sunflower Bakery, which provides job training and opportunities for people with disabilities. Their cookies are amazing, so eat a bunch and take a bunch home, because we're gonna have leftovers and I don't put them all on my hips. I just have a couple of last things. Congressman Jamie Raskin couldn't be here today, but he and Congressman David Trone send their love and their wishes. You know that Jamie Raskin served with Jenny in the Senate, and lucky for them. And then Mary Borges sends her best wishes from California. I talked to her last night, and she, I think, is probably watching live on the live stream. And so they serve together, not always as besties, but they definitely work together for the good of the residents. And I'm just going to close with, it would be cool if it came up right now, but when I was sworn in to the Senate as Jenny's successor in January 2015, the rules were that we were each allowed to have 2 guests on the floor. And so most people brought, their kids or their parents or their, or their spouse or whatever. And I asked for special permission, that picture, to have 3 guests. And Mike Miller, the late president, Senate president, who was a huge historian, he didn't know me that well. We knew each other a little bit. He was a little dubious about this liberal Montgomery County person. But the fact that my guests were my predecessor, Jennie Forehand, and her predecessor, Mary Borges, and her predecessor, Frank Shore, he just thought was the coolest thing ever. And it was a great honor for me to have them come together, because the 3 of them did not always work together on the same side of some issues. And for them to come together, to be there to support me, was just such a gift. And Jenny helped make all of that possible by saying yes, and then I went to the others. And so her presence in Annapolis, I believe that was the last time she was in the Senate, was January 2015. And it was such an honor to have her there with me as I started my Senate career, speaking out for the residents of District 17. So with that, I thank all of you for being here, and my friend and longtime colleague, Kumar Garve.
Thank you, Senator.
And thank you, Cheryl.
I had the good fortune of sitting next to then delegate Jennie Forehand for 4 years. She had the aisle seat because she had seniority, and I was next to her. And I remember I didn't know her really well at that time, and I would just ask her blunt questions, which the family will know she would appreciate it. I literally said something like, "You're from the South, how can you be a liberal?" And she said something to the effect of, "Well, if you grew up in the South and you had a brain, you had to become a liberal." This is great for her. And so much of what I wanted to say has been mentioned. Of course, her kindness. She was funny, she was gracious, helpful, fair. She hated all forms of bigotry, period. Full stop. Compassionate, empathetic. But the thing I would like to really emphasize now is the fact that she, along with then Delegate Connie Morella and then Delegate Nancy Cobb and so many other women in our legislature, made Maryland and the legislature a better place, because, everybody talks about the good old days, but they were not good in many cases. They just weren't. And if you've been in the legislature for 32 years, as I've been, I was there at the very tail end of when women and black people, not to mention gay people, and nobody even knew what transgender was at that time. That was a time when people such as that were derided and made fun of, and it was horrible. But, Jennie Forehand was a person who simply didn't understand why women couldn't go to a service academy as her daughter did, to the Naval Academy. She didn't understand why gay people shouldn't be treated the same as absolutely everyone else. she thought it was really cool that an African American could become a county council member and then a county executive, that a Hindu and an Indian American like me could be the first elected in the United States as a state legislator. And make no mistake about it, I mean, these changes don't happen out of it's not a mere random event. It's because people decide to push forward. And I do want to conclude by saying that we were the four of us, a terrific team, along with Delegate Mike Gordon. Jennie did have this really important genetic privacy bill, and the Senate popped it out into the House the day before sine die, or was it the day of sine die?
It was the last day of session.
The last day of session, and Mike Gordon, Cheryl, Kagan, and I made sure that it got voted on. That was team effort, and that kind of a team effort is what she was known for, of course. But you know, you were all a member of that team as well, and her accomplishments were only possible because we had everybody else's back. And so I can say that I live, my family and I, my wife and I, all of you together, we live in a better world and in a better state because of her. And it was her hard work and her unwillingness to say the way we do things is good enough and maybe we can wait another 10 years. No, she wants to do it right now, and she did. And so I want to we both want to thank all of you. We're Team 17, and we get great things accomplished when we work together, and thank you so much.